My name is Teresa Enright. I'm the State Revolving Fund Coordinator for the Drinking Water and the Wastewater Programs with the Iowa SRF program. And today we'll be talking about how you can access lead service line replacement funding through the Drinking Water SRF program. But to start off our informational session today, I'm going to turn it over to Carmelie, and she is going to talk us through. Actually, let me go through the agenda first. Today, during our session, we're going to be talking a little bit about inventory resources, and that's what Carmelie is going to kick us off with. We'll talk about the lead service line replacement funding that's available, both through the base program through SRF and lead service line funding through the bipartisan infrastructure law. We will talk about what those funding requirements will be, how to apply for the funds, and kind of some really general next steps after, what to expect after applying. And this a quick update for public outreach. So if you are ready, Carmelie, I think I will go ahead and turn it over to you. And I'm going to turn off my video so I don't mess up the screening here. There you go.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Teresa. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to see all of you here today, or hear all of you and all of your questions. I'm really appreciative that Teresa has been able to put this together for us. I know that we have been out to a lot of regional meetings lately and a few conferences lately, and we have gotten a lot of questions about SRF funding, what it can be used for, what it can't be used for, how does it work, how do I get access to it? And so I am not always the expert in answering those questions. And so I just feel a lot better if you can hear it straight from Teresa. And so I appreciate her taking her time today to put this together. So just really briefly, we're going to go through some basic lead service line inventory stuff. Hopefully you have heard by now that your lead service line inventories are due. Yep. Everything okay? Okay. That lead service line inventories are due to the Iowa DNR on October 16th of 2024. We've been talking about this for about 18 months now, so hopefully you have heard a presentation at a conference, or you have heard, or you have seen one of the mailings that we have sent out, or been out to the website, or heard it from any of your professional organizations that this is happening. And so please, if you have any questions, you can reach out to the contact information that's provided on this slide. For technical assistance, Preston Kaiser is working at IAMU. You do not have to be an IAMU member to access his resources or his technical assistance, but he is amazing. We get questions, we send them to Preston. Preston is very responsive, and you may even just get a call from Preston, even if you haven't called him, because he's checking up on people to see, where are you at with your lead service line inventory? Do you need any help with that? So if you have any technical questions on how to fill out your form, what am I doing? What does this even mean? What do I put in this box? Preston can answer those questions for you. The other financial information, so that is Danae, who works at IAMU as well. Again, you don't have to be a member of IAMU to access these services. This is a contract that DNR has with IAMU. And so if you're confused about the funding, where to go for funding, which funding source should I be using, Danae can help you with those questions as well. And then if you have other questions that need to be directed to the Iowa DNR, you can use that LCRR email that you see on top there. So we are still answering that inbox. If you send an email there, you should get a response from Heidi. So next slide, please. All right, so for any additional resources, as we wait for the final rule to come out, you can go to the EPA website here. It has the proposed lead and copper rule improvements, or the LCRI, that you may hear us use as an abbreviation. And so if you're interested in looking to see what the final rule might look like with that proposed rule, you can reach out to EPA on the website that's provided here. Next slide. In addition to the EPA website that we have, the Iowa DNR also has its own lead service line inventory page. On this inventory page, you're going to find a lot of things. You're going to find, first of all, the lead service line inventory template. If you haven't downloaded that yet, please go out. That's one of the very first steps that you need to do, is to go out, download that tool, start filling it out. There are a couple of documents out there, such as the FAQ that is out there from It's a summary of some questions that we've been receiving, the same question over and over. We've put it on that frequently asked questions document that you can review before you even need to contact us. There's also the initial memos that we have sent out regarding the lead service line inventory. And so if you didn't get that memo, or somebody before you in your position might have gotten that memo but might have tossed it, and you're like, what did that say? You can go out there and you can read those initial memos as well. It's also going to be the place where you can come back and check later this spring for how to submit your lead service line inventory through the drinking water portal. But it also has a validation checker tool that you can take a look at as well. So I'm not going to go over those resources today. That's a different training, but I just want to let you know what all is available out there on the website. Next slide, please. So again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I really want you guys to be able to get into the presentation about how to access the funds for lead service line inventories and replacements. But some of you have had some questions. These are just a few of the samples of the questions that we have available for you on that frequently asked questions document. About the ownership of the service line. What do I put if it's private? What do I put if it's public? What if the lines are shared? Those answers are out there for you on that tool or on that frequently asked questions document. System specific ID, what do I need to use for that? That's also out there. So you can use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can use a customer number, a billing number, whatever makes sense to you, but you have to be able to relate that back to an address later. So multiple things that you can do, and some ideas are out there for you. Next slide. Verification source, what qualifies? Well, right now, a lot of things qualify. It's pretty broad. So we are following the initial EPA guidance that was put out in August of 2022. But we know that when the LCRI comes out and that new rule comes out, it may start to shrink of what is a source that we can use as far as verification. But we have gotten a lot of questions about what can we use. And so some of those examples are also available on that frequently asked questions document. Also, like what do systems do when there are no records? We have a lot of systems. Some of those systems are very big systems. Some of them are very small, but they've said, I don't have any records. What can I do? And so we have some suggestions here of things that you can do, and also talk to your neighbors, talk to the other water systems and those around you, and see what they did to start collecting that information. Again, if you need more thoughts, ideas, suggestions, calling IAMU and calling Preston and saying, what have you heard that people are doing to find information if they don't have records? Next slide, please. The 30-day notice to customers. So this has also been a really big question for us. If you have unknown lines on your lead service line inventory, galvanized requiring replacement on your lead service line inventory, as well as lead service lines, there is going to be a 30-day notice to customers to let them know that this is what your service line material is. So that's kind of a good reason or a good prompt of why we are trying to figure out what those materials are now, especially the unknowns. If you don't want to have to send out a lot of 30-day notices, it's good to find out that information now. But if you're not able to find that out before the August 16th date, if the 30-day notice to customers is not going to start until after that October 16th, 2024 date. A lot of people have said, if I turn in my lead service line inventory to you now, does that 30-day notice start? No, it does not start. It's not going to start until after that October 16th, 2024. Then the 30-day notice will start. Also, copying and pasting from our own template. If you already have a template, some systems were ahead of the game and had started this earlier. Can I copy and paste that into the DNR template? That is most of the answers to that is a no, except into the free text columns, such as the service address or the general notes. If you have those in another spreadsheet, you can copy and paste that information. But if it is information that is in some of those columns, it is tricky to do that, and it also does not always allow us, or it gives us different results on the spreadsheet if your fields don't match up exactly to our fields. So we understand that this is a common problem with some. It's not everyone's favorite spreadsheet to work with. We also understand that as well. We hope that in the future we will have a better tool for you to use, and an easier, more customer-friendly friendly one, but this is what we've got for right now. So copying pasting is tricky. Again, if you have questions about that, please reach out to Preston or to someone here at DNR, and we can talk to you more about that. Next slide, please. And I think that's it. So I will turn it over to Teresa.
Thank you, Carmelie. Everybody hear me okay? I get a thumbs up from somebody?
Yep, sound good.
Switch. Okay, great. I switched my microphone. All right, yeah, let's get into it. Let's start talking about funding. Thank you, Cassie. Okay, there we go. So first and foremost, how are these lead service line projects funded? We have availability to fund lead service line projects through our base program at any time. Those projects will be funded based off of our current interest rate. But lead service line funding is also available through the bipartisan infrastructure law for the SRF programs to apply. We have 5 annual allotments through bill. It runs through the federal fiscal year 2022 through federal fiscal year 2026 budgets. And we currently just received information on our budgets for the 2024 year. So we are moving into our 3rd year of bill. With the bill funding, 49% of the total allocation that the state of Iowa receives has to be issued as loan forgiveness. And that loan forgiveness also has to be offered to disadvantaged communities based off of our program's definition of what a disadvantaged community is. So big question is, why are we looking right now? Why is this something new that's coming up last minute? In order for us to get the funding to be able to use it in Iowa, we have to show that we have enough need for what our total allotment is. So the SRF program, once they announce the annual allotment, we have 2 years to apply for each of those funds. So year 1, which was federal fiscal year 2022, we applied for that money and we received that full amount, and that is within our control here in Iowa. That was a total of $44.9 million. Now the next year, the needs survey came out and the formulas were adjusted. And so Iowa's allocation was reduced to $29.3 million. And this is the year that we're talking about coming up on our 2-year deadline for applying for. So we have available $29.3 million in new funding available for new projects to apply for. We have to, as a state, apply for this money by June 30th in order to receive it. Otherwise, it will go back to the pot and it will get reallocated for other states to apply for. So Iowa has to, in order to apply for this money, Iowa has to demonstrate enough project applications to equal our state allocation. So I've got to demonstrate in our application, we have $29 million worth of projects, of lead service line projects that I can distribute these funds to. If we don't have enough, they'll take what we can't use. They'll give us what we can prove that we have for projects, and they'll take what we can't use and distribute it out to other states. And if Iowa, basically, if we want to be one of those states that can receive additional funding from reallocations, we have to first show that we can use our own allocation first, or eat our slice of the pie. So real quick, again, this is our initial year of bill funding for lead service lines was $44.9 million. Now, when we applied for this funding, we had a significant response and we had more project costs than we had funding. Since then, some of the projects have gone through some adjustments. And so now where we sit with this funding is I have an additional $11.9 million available to reallocate. This is a list of the projects that are currently on our project priority list. So about 33 million. And you can see that we have projects that range from around $240,000 all the way up to $12 million. There's one project on here that's not shown, and it's Kristen, and it's because it's a newer project that is a combined project. And don't really want to get into that right now, but we can talk about that if it comes up in the Q&As. For 2023, again, this is our budget. We're looking for $29.3 million, and of that, the SRF program will be required to issue principal forgiveness or loan forgiveness for $14 million of those dollars. And for the final 2 years of bill, we won't know that until each budget is announced each year. However, this year, 2024, we should be receiving what our allocation is by the end of April. And this last 7th DWSRF, the drinking water needs survey that was done, there was a redo for the lead service line portion. And so based on the results of that redo is what they're going to use to create the formula to indicate how much of the total overall available funding each state can have. Again, we should be able to find out what that allocation is by the end of the month, but then we'll have 2 years to apply for this new funding. Okay, again, why now? We're talking about a time right now between where we are today and that June 30th date where the SRF program can apply for this funding. So basically, any of projects that come in between now and in the next 3 months are going to help us demonstrate that we have at least a minimum of 29 million of lead service line replacement needs in our state. And if we get that full amount, again, that money stays in-house. Even if project dollars change and more money becomes available for reallocation, it's under our control to reallocate it to other IONs for lead service line projects. So it's important for us to get all of our money available. Okay, so what's the offer? Right now, what we are offering for bill lead service line funding, specifically from the bipartisan infrastructure funding, is we will be offering 0% interest loans up to our amount of our allocated funds. So up to the 44 million from our first year, up to the 29 million from our second year. And of that, an equivalent of 49% of our allocation has to be issued to disadvantaged community projects as loan forgiveness. So who qualifies for those 0% interest loans? Basically any public water supply system. Because when we were rolling out bill, we heard from our stakeholders that they wanted to be able to not just look at the community as a whole as being disadvantaged, but that they recognize they have certain neighborhoods within their communities or within their service areas that may be disadvantaged, even if their community as a whole was not disadvantaged. So any public water supply system can apply for this program funding. And then the loan forgiveness piece that's available through the bipartisan infrastructure law funding is only going to be available for the disadvantaged portions of that. So just a clarification on what is available. So again, talking about a full lead service line replacement or any associated activities that's directly connected to either identifying or planning and designing for or doing the actual replacements of lead service lines. And again, that funding will be available until we've obligated all of it. And lead service lines can be either system owned or customer owned. So the loan forgiveness of 49% is being offered to any applicant that is doing a replacement. It's being offered on the construction cost of those necessary replacements for the privately owned portions of the lead service lines that exist within the qualifying census tract areas within their service area. So in order to determine that, there is a socioeconomic assessment tool that we use in our program to determine disadvantaged status. And there's one that's been designed specifically to be used to identify which census tracts within your counties are considered disadvantaged. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute. And so then how does an individual address qualify? Well, as you're filling out this socioeconomic assessment tool and putting in the census tract, it will pre-populate for you a score between 0 and 20. And so any of those census tracts that score between an 11 and a 20 meet our program's definition of disadvantaged community. So you will identify what the GOID number or the FIPS code is for the census tract where your addresses reside. Plug that number into our tool and it will pop out a score between 0 and 20. So this is an example of what that tool looks like. I'm going to go off this for a second. On our SRF website, there are several places where you can locate this document. The one I'm going to recommend you use first and foremost is from our resources pages under the documents and guides. And it's right here. It's called Fiscal Year 24 Socioeconomic Assessment by Track. When you pull that up, it's going to look like this, and it has an instructions tab, and then it has the tab where you actually put in your FIPS code. So let me get back to my presentation. So this is something that we just pulled up. I pulled this off of the instructions piece. Pull this off of the instructions tab, and it just shows where you can put an individual address in here, or it gives you an option to do a batch where you can upload a CVS file and input a whole bunch of addresses at the same time. What you're looking for is that FIPS code, or at the bottom of what gets populated once you hit results. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a section for census tract, and it's the GOID number. That's the number that will get entered into the light blue square or rectangle that's on that essay tool. I also wanted to point out that ArcGIS has kind of a cool, quick way of identifying entire census tracts visually. So ArcGIS, if you filter with the US Census tracts, then you can just hover over it. It will highlight what the particular census tract you're looking for, and then it pops up with this box, and it also has the FIPS code. So I happen to go into this link that I provided here, hit the search button, and I just put in Dubuque, Iowa, and just hovered on various ones. So I would pull this one and put it into that census tract tool. These are all the places on our website where you can find that tool. It is available in, I think, 5 different places. So from a general information tab where I first showed you, it's also available on the drinking water programs page here, and it's also available on the bipartisan infrastructure law page. And on this drinking water page, I'll also point out that's where the drinking water intended use plan application is also located. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the bill funding requirements. So all of the bipartisan infrastructure lead service line funding is considered federal funding. That's not always true with our SRF program. In fact, most of the time, only a portion of our money is ever identified as federal funding. But in this case, all bill lead service line money is considered federal. So you may hear that being called equivalency as an equivalency project. An equivalency project means that it's a treatment works project that's constructed either in whole or in part with funds that equal the amount of our federal capitalization grant award to the state. So that's, in this case, we're talking about that 44.9 million, or that 29 million that we need to apply for now. So anybody receiving any portion of that is going to be receiving federal funds. And because of that, certain federal requirements go along with this. Now, with the SRF program, for many years, we have treated all of our projects just about the same, and then only a few of the equivalency requirements ever applied to certain projects that we identified. But for the most part, all of these things that are required have been done by the majority of our projects. Everyone already goes through a disadvantaged business enterprise requirement. What's new are these yellow highlighted areas. So if you're not accustomed to having a single audit and you receive more in federal funds in a single year than the threshold, then you will be required to conduct a single audit that year. The next item is something that I do. It's not something that you guys do. You wouldn't have to worry about that. But the EPA bill signage is a requirement that applies to the lead service line funding, as well as the Buy America, Build America Act. Buy America, Build America Act, very quickly, is just an expansion of the American Iron and Steel. It's an expansion of the domestic procurement laws for federally funded projects. That means now not just our iron and steel items required to be procured in the United States, or procured and manufactured in the United States, but it extends to manufactured goods and also construction materials. So we have our project compliance specialist, Amy Seifer, is with us today and can answer some questions on that if necessary, but we will provide you all the information you need to know on that, on the BABA requirements. And all of the other federal, environmental, and socioeconomic cross-cutters, all of you already do. Okay, so let's get down to talking about application requirements. We're creating a little bit of a twist for now based on just the scenario that we're in, where we have roughly these 3 months left to apply for this fund. So right now, a submission of a lead service line project, in order to be listed on the project priority list, you have to submit a drinking water SRF intended use plan application. In that application, you need to describe your project, and you need to identify a number of addresses that the replacements can be completed in a 2 to 3 year window, and then provide the budget for that. In addition to that, you'll need to submit a specific list of addresses that will be replaced for your project. Typically, when you're submitting an SRF IUP application, a preliminary engineering report is required, and that will be required for this. However, with these applications, if you don't have your lead service line replacement plan / PER available yet, we will still accept your application. And I'll talk more about that in future slides. And then the final thing would be your viability assessment. So basically, it's nothing different if you're accustomed to using the SRF program. It's the application, lead service, or your PER, and the viability assessment. But we're asking for a specific address list to be accompanied. It's important to know that we still have a deadline of October 16th, 2024, but you don't have to wait until then to submit your project. If you have known lead service lines and you can formulate a project where you want to replace the ones that you know about, you don't have to wait till your full inventory is completed to submit that lead service line application to the drinking water program. So we will be accepting applications anytime starting now through June 15th. Typically, we have a quarterly application deadline, and so we are opening that up through any day of the week. Send in your applications now through June 15th so we can meet our June 30th deadline. Please continue to send your IUP applications to that srf-iup@dnr.iowa.gov address. Again, the goal is for our program to apply for these funds by the end of June of this year. And then after June, any additional applications will start going back and following our quarterly application cycle. Okay, just a little side note that submitting an IUP application is like our regular base program too. You're not necessarily locking in to getting a construction loan with us. If things change, well, that's understandable, but sufficient funding has to be available for us to be able to offer you a loan using the bill funding. If that funding is no longer available, SRF funding can still be available. But projects that come onto the IUP right now will all be in a contingent status for lead service line projects. That contingent status will remain there until that lead service line plan has been received and approved, and until an environmental review clearance has been done. That will clear your project to move to construction, and we'll commit the funds at that point. We are still obligating funds or committing funds to you when we put you on the PPL, but we are not going to be able to commit lead service line funding specifically until we're able to get you off that contingent status. Okay, so like any other SRF projects, a project can increase or decrease once it's already on the project priority list. We can make adjustments to that if necessary. And also, if it just turns out that it's not going to work out, you can always also drop the project without any consequence and reapply when you're ready. Okay, I did mention this, however, I'll say it again, that all lead service line projects that go on our project priority list are considered contingent for the funding until the environmental review is cleared and that lead service line replacement plan is approved by DNR. And this lead service line replacement plan the approval is in lieu of construction permitting in these types of projects. I also want to mention that the specific address list that's originally submitted to us with the application, there's the opportunity for that to change from the original list. So a final list will be required at some point, and at that point is going to be before the environmental review can be completed. And that final address list also has to be incorporated as part of the DNR approved lead service line plan. Okay, so after the application, you'll be working with your DNR project manager, and with the environmental review specialists and with finance, but you'll be finalizing your address list, completing your plan. We'll be hosting project initiation meeting with you and your community, and you'll begin to work with the ER staff on clearance process. So I'm going to turn it over to Tara now, and she's going to talk us through a little bit more about the lead service line replacement plan.
Thanks, Teresa. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so just a special note on this. So like Teresa said, we're being more flexible than we would be otherwise during this particular time frame. And for this time frame for new IUP applications for lead service line replacement projects, a lead service line project plan / preliminary engineering report will not be required until September 13th of 2024. So that's 90 days after that June 15th deadline for the IUP application to be submitted. What we're trying to do here is give potential applicants a little more time to get things put together. This should get you closer to that deadline for the service line inventories. And another note that I'd like to make here is that just because you submit a lead service line project plan or engineering report related to the project does not mean that it cannot be modified. During the technical review process, there will be an opportunity for you to add or remove service lines or add or remove information. If we undergo the technical review and find that we're missing info, we will ask for that to be added in. So just want to note that there is additional flexibility here as well. Next slide. Okay, so a summary of the lead service line replacement project plan and or preliminary engineering report guidance. So normally drinking water SRF project applications require preliminary engineering report. DNR does not regulate or issue construction permits for service lines, so we made the decision to allow for a lead service line replacement project plan to be submitted in the place of an engineering report. So either or is accepted. It's up to your community on what works best for you. Lead service line replacement project plan does not need to be produced or certified by a licensed engineer in the state of Iowa. Just a piece of information if that makes a difference for you. The guidance is available at the site listed. A lot of those pieces of information are going to be very important for the environmental review process, so we do ask that you take a careful look at that. We did update the guidance in February of this year to include some considerations for how your community plans to manage the either disposal or abandoning lead service lines in place, just to have that thought through before we proceed with the project. Because if there is abandonment, there's going to be a different outcome or different result than more work needed, or sorry, less work needed than if there's going to be removal and disposal. Disposal considerations might be a bit more complicated if that's the case. So just to make sure that that's thought through, we've added that in. And if you have any questions, my contact information is listed there. And the note on the bottom in the smaller text is that this is related to, this guidance information needs to be included for standalone lead service line replacement projects, as well as lead service line replacement work that is included as part of a larger water distribution, water main replacement project. So we can receive that either way, both ways, but if it's received as part of a water main replacement project, that will need a preliminary engineering report like usual, and that report will need to have the information included that is outlined in the guidance that's available. Next slide. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Okay, next, I'm going to keep the environmental review stuff pretty short. let's see, sorry. For your information, we're going to need an environmental checklist, just like we would with any other type of project. This will have to be submitted before, after application at that time, but certainly before the projects go before the Environmental Protection Commission to get finalized as fundable on a project on the project priority list. Also, our environmental review specialists will be looking for shape files, and specific address list will be required for them to complete their review. Projects will likely be required to include specific contractual language in their bid packages, requiring construction guidelines when they're doing these replacements. So that's just a kind of a heads up for even when we're getting to a point for bid packages. And that's really it for environmental review for today that I'm going to mention. And then we have one more public outreach. Really good news that I wanted to share if you hadn't heard it yet. There was some initial confusion on the tax implications of a homeowner receiving these replacements at no cost to them or receiving loan forgiveness for the replacement cost of their lead service lines. And the IRS has made a decision on that. And their decision is that those replacements for homeowners do not result in income increase for them. So water systems are not required, or state governments are not required to issue those 1099 Gs or the 1099 miscellaneous for the cost of replacing those lead service lines. It's not applicable anymore. And this even includes this bulletin that they published recently clarifies that this even includes the landlord-owned properties. So single property owners themselves plus rental income fall under this IRS bulletin exception. Okay, this slide just kind of points you in the direction for some additional contacts. So if you have some project-specific questions, or if you had lead service line plan questions or viability assessment questions, Tara that you saw talking to us today would be a good person to point out or for your contact there. If you have questions related to the funding requirements like BABA or signage, Amy Seifer is our project compliance specialist, and she'd be a good person to ask those questions to. Go ahead and contact myself if you have questions about loan forgiveness or how to determine what would be available for loan forgiveness. And then finally, if you have any issues with using the socioeconomic assessment tool, go ahead and use that waterquality@iowafinance.com email address. And I would like to go back to the very beginning and point out that that first slide with that Carmelie talked about too, this IAMUTA is available for all of those types of questions as well for technical assistance. So I think that gets us to the end of the presentation portion. So I'm going to freeze it here. Give everybody, while I'm going through this, give everybody one more chance to go ahead and put your name and your operator number in the chat if you'd like to receive CEU credits for this. And we'll make sure that we record that for you guys. So I'm going to stop presenting this, and I'm going to stop our recording, and we will move into our question and answer session.